Now, when we understand our own myths, because what do we hold as vegans? The world will never become vegan. We won't see it in our lifetime. I don't believe that for a moment. I believe without a shadow of a doubt, we will see a vegan world in our lifetime. Is it because everyone's going to wake up consciously? I don't actually think that's going to be the case. But the reality is most people follow. This is what's happening at the moment. This is why they're eating a diet that's killing them, contributing to enormous suffering of animals, enormous suffering of workers, degradation of our environment, all the things that go with it. There's no good news about eating animals, as we know. But they're going along with it because they've inherited it. When we truly take ownership of our choices and see possibilities, we can then start to say, where am I denying I have choice? We're always told to eat meat, we say. So, well, not everybody does, and you don't necessarily need to because you were brought up that way. The person, it's that existential uncertainty that goes, well, if I can change, what else can I change?
Welcome to the Better Life for Animals podcast, where we amplify the voices of animal advocates, sanctuaries, and changemakers working toward a kinder, more compassionate world. Through powerful stories and expert insights, we shine a light on the efforts to rescue, protect, and advocate for animals. Be sure to subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. Every follower helps us reach more people and support animal sanctuaries. Enjoy the conversation.
Clare Mann is a vegan psychologist, existential psychotherapist, and author whose work focuses on the emotional and psychological impact of living in a non-vegan world. She coined the term Vystopia, explored in her book Vystopia, The Anguish of Being Vegan in a Non-Vegan World. She does this to describe the profound anguish many ethical vegans feel when they awaken to the systematic animal exploitation. In her latest book, Myths of Choice, Why People Won't Change and What You Can Do About It, she reveals how powerful cultural and personal myths shape our sense of freedom, keep people disconnected from the realities of animal suffering, and block meaningful change. Through her counseling, communication training, and writing, she helps vegans and animal advocates transform grief and frustration into clarity, resilience, and more effective action for animals. Clare Mann, welcome to the podcast.
It's wonderful to be here. And when I hear those things, it's that's a reason to get up in the morning. Hey, Cheryl, for all of us. We
Absolutely.
sort of share that vision.
Yes, the work you're doing is incredible. I can't wait to talk about it. I love first of all, starting off with the fact that you came up with an actual phrase, Vystopia, to explain how we were feeling. I can remember feeling very upset and distraught and not really understanding what was going on with me. And when I saw that word Vystopia, it was a big aha, and it was quite a relief. Yeah. So I'm wondering if perhaps you can explain to our audience what it means and why it resonates so deeply with people who become aware of animal suffering.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't have to tell people what the concept or the experience is, because as you say, as soon as you hear the word, you're a telling witness to it. And the fact that I was a telling witness and lived it and breathed it and felt the anguish that, I know you and other listeners have and continue to feel at the industrialized, systematized, normalized, legalized, speciesist cruelty towards animals. And then when we tell people, instead of them immediately going, oh my gosh, that's terrible, let's do something, instead they ridicule, they laugh, they resist, they say the government would never allow it. And so we get in the definition, as I say, which is the trance-like collusion with a dark and dystopian world they're actually not even aware of, that we weren't aware of ourselves. But there's actually also a third piece. And it basically says, well, if I didn't know about all these, I'm going to say 3 trillion animals, and if we include every fishes and every crustacea, which I believe we should,
yes.
We say, well, if I didn't know about that, well, what else don't I know? But then we're called a conspiracy theorist. So any conversations about, it doesn't have to always be worse. It could be better. There could be a better solution to this. It's immediately shut down. This is how it is, or be worse than this and whatever. So that's really what Vystopia is. primarily the anguish we feel. We wake up one day and we're a stranger in a strange land. We look around, we don't see a leather couch, we see an animal's skin. We don't see a cup of coffee in a mall, we see a baby calf taken from their mother. And we don't see a beautiful fancy new lipstick without thinking about the testing. The world has changed, but with that is also an opportunity.
Many activists struggle to communicate what they know without feeling dismissed or overwhelmed. I know for myself, sometimes I just go silent and then I feel culpable, like I haven't spoken up for the animals. So what are the psychological barriers that are at play in these conversations, Claire?
Yeah. Do you mean in terms of the resistance of other people in having those conversations?
Yes.
Yeah. That's right. And, I think it's really important, Cheryl, that we do understand our own psychology and others. And I think books like, or coming like the meat paradox actually highlighted a number of those, but I'm going to add one that actually a number of researchers are now coming to that. And in the meat paradox, if I can remember, it says, it did a big bit of research in the UK, and it was something like 97% of people, when they were answering questions about this is what goes on in factory farms, it was really detailed. There were lots and lots of questions of the specific things that we know about, graphic things. 97% of the study, the people said this is absolutely wrong and it shouldn't happen. Yet we don't have 97% of vegans. They are paying someone else to engage in those practices. And we know the industries work very hard. So in the meat paradox, the question the answers, which I sort of agree with, but I think they're more, said, well, partly it's sort of cognitive dissonance. And that's really when there is a disconnect, or we seek as human beings to align our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions. And a wonderful example, without going into too much detail, is, you might buy a new car and you feel great about it. You've did a lot of research logically on its fuelage and whatever. Mind you, that's quite funny at our time of our recording with fuel prices, the safety and that sort of thing. But you also feel good about it and it's a treat. And you think, oh my gosh, whether it's a new or secondhand car, I've never bought a new car and won't, but it's like, oh, this feels great. So your thoughts, feelings, or actions are aligned. Then somebody questions the validity of that car and the safety record and the fuel price, and then you start feeling doubt. So you can change your thoughts and go, oh my gosh, I'll do the research and send the car back. You can actually emotionally get upset and say, oh no, I've done the research, I'm absolutely fine, duping yourself possibly, not even looking, because the behavior is you're driving the car. In other words, we act to bring alignment. If the information is so compelling, we have to change the behavior and not buy the car or give it back. Now, that happens with that cognitive dissonance then is when we're talking to people and their espoused values is they don't believe they should be cruel to animals. They're emotionally upset by what we've shown them, and yet they're eating animals. So they have to adjust it. And as people like Hope for the Animals said, is the humane hoax. Is people dupe themselves into believing they can have their cake and eat it, or have their meat and eat it. The animals are fine, and we have to do this at the end. So you've got the cognitive dissonance. I knew when I was going to quote this, I'm not sure I can remember the others, which is the funny one. So you've got that one. You've then actually got a denial that animals are sentient in the way that humans are. Well, they don't feel so bad when the babies are taken away. They just get on with life. Anyone who's been anywhere near animals or has any common sense in Mother Nature realizes that's an absolute myth. And they don't just suffer for 6 hours, as often is told. They cry. They don't actually. I've heard them cry for 30 hours. It goes on throughout their life, as it would with any other mother, I'm sure. So you've got that actual denial. You've then got this buying into the conformity that other people, we have a right to do this. It's necessary, but we can do it in a better way. Now, I'm not quoting the meat paradox in the right sort of way there, I know, but we've got the cognitive dissonance. We've got this sort of alignment in denial that animals deserve the justice and care. They don't suffer as much as we do. So you've got all these sort of things going on. You've then got a number of things to do with their upbringing, their conformity. This is how we've always done it. The sort of values, beliefs. This is my culture. All the justifications. The government would never allow it. So you've got all this other stuff going on. I think the piece that is often missing is what I call the existential piece. And people like John Sambo-Matsu has really started to talk about this now, which is wonderful, and other writers, which is great. An existential position is that we look for certainty in an uncertain existence in many ways. As the older we get, of course, we realize that whilst we might put things in place, relationships, jobs, community actions, friendships, laws, all sorts of things, we know they're really up for grabs in the sense of it doesn't always end the way we might have planned at the beginning, but we work very hard to keep things consistent. So when we look around and we see friends divorced, jobs being lost, friendships being lost, human behavior changing, we feel an anxiety. The existential approach would be is we try to say, we can't say this is sacrosanct, we have a certain world, because within that is choice to change. So there's this anxiety that actually says, I have to live in the fire in many ways, is that there are things within my choices and life that I can operate on, but a lot of things can actually change. But this is the whole thing, we can adapt and grow. With that existential feel is when we're telling people about veganism and they can't eat what they used to eat, the eating behavior, as Dr. Will Tuttle says, it is so ubiquitous across all our cultural traditions and habits. Marriages, weddings, births, death, Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving, it always has a food element. And associated with that are certain foods. It's also related to what people can afford, cultural traditions. And then we come along and say, well, actually, you can't do that anymore. Okay, in the same way you did it. And I believe that it's more than don't tell me what to do. It's an unconscious lever that tries to say, everything's changing in the world. The world's in chaos, but this is sacrosanct. There are some objective realities. Easter, Christmas, birthdays, holidays. This is what we do on them to embed those beliefs. So I think there are many sort of reasons. They're logical, they're cognitive dissonance, they're value-based, they're social conformity, but I think they're also a denial of existential uncertainty. I want to keep this sacrosanct. And if you take away my food, you're not just taking away a meal because we know you can eat so much better. We've always done it like this sort of thing is the approach that happens. So we've got to break through that trance. And that was a very long way of answering that. I apologize it being so long.
Not at all. I hear that there's so much of this is entrenched. It's the fabric of our society, and yet those of us who are vegans have woken up to something that others are not choosing not to see or don't see, but that as advocates, it's our job and our absolute imperative, I'd say, that we call it out. And that's why I love what you do with regard to breaking through with conversation. I know I'm going to just say it. I'm in your course. I love the course. And we're talking a lot about how to have those conversations with our loved ones, even with, and then beyond that. But most typically those loved one conversations are the most challenging. But I love how you, Claire, start with things like a question. Or, I didn't know this before. I think there's some entrees that you have developed and I've seen you practice that make it so it's like a soft landing.
Yeah.
Do you think that we could perhaps try that? Let's pretend I'm having dinner with you right now, and I just ordered a souffle or a quiche, even though it's vegetarian, right? Yeah. But it has eggs in it. But I'm here telling you, but it's vegetarian. It's just eggs.
Yeah, it's just eggs sort of thing. Well, I actually wouldn't encourage people to have the conversation when somebody's got a mouthful of food, but we'll pretend we're having coffee afterwards and we're talking about what is wrong with that. And actually, well, it's interesting you've asked me that, Cheryl, what is actually wrong with that? Firstly, how come you're asking the question, is it right or wrong? Where are you coming from on this?
Well, I don't think that people know that when you're eating an egg, there's a chicken that was impacted to produce that egg, and that we had there was a time when chickens produced maybe 12 eggs a year. And now, due to all of this factory farming, their bodies are being stressed with hormone therapy to produce eggs a day, and it breaks down their bones, and they don't live to their full life because they've been stressed out being in constant pregnancy ovulation. And and then at 2 years old, when they're no longer producing at that rate, we dismiss them. They are put out, we destroy them. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't speak to the other half of the population, which are all the male chicks. Did you happen to know that all the male chicks that are found to be not useful, not profitable, are destroyed within the first day of their life? So when I see an egg, Claire, that's what I think of.
Well, you are an absolute natural, which is wonderful. I thought I was doing the other bits, actually. So I was trying to be the vegan, but not to worry. But it's good because all that information is valid and you've got that whole arsenal of information. There is no, and also being vegan, as you know, is no bad news. But if that came in one big barrage, we would find that that person would go, well, firstly, they'd interrupt you way earlier, wouldn't they?
Yes.
You would be spoken over. So we have to control the speaker. And there's a way to do that as if it looks as if we want more time. But also I think the way is to actually ask more questions around that so that you're engaging. Neuroscience tells us is that through the conversation, the more we get people to say yes, unconsciously they kind of know they could say no. So we can't be told we're preaching at. So I loved how you started off with the question, but then we need to stop. So if I'm happy to do it again, if you like, and I'll be the resistant one. So I'll speak over you, do that, all that sort of thing. If you're up for grabs on this one.
Why not?
Exactly. Now, okay, Cheryl, I'm so pleased to say I'm vegetarian. Oh my gosh, I could never eat meat, and there was a fabulous souffle I just had. Don't know why you didn't try it, to be honest, Cheryl. It was wonderful. What's the problem with it?
Well, Claire, first of all, I'm happy to hear that you're vegetarian because that means that you've put so many things aside for all the right reasons, I'm sure, your health, but most of all, I'm sure, for the compassion of the animals, because we know
absolutely,
how many animals suffer.
Oh, yes, exactly. Yes. I could never hurt an animal. It's like, how do people do it? I don't know.
I hear you, Claire. And that's why when I see an egg, I continue with that same thought process. And because I happen to know that those poor chickens suffer terribly in order to deliver those eggs on my plate. So I've made the decision, Claire, knowing what I do, that I just can't consume eggs ever again.
But I'm glad you've said that, to be honest, because I looked a bit into that and those cages are absolutely dreadful. So I've been doing cage free, but I've even gone further. I go to the local farm and I get the organic eggs there, and they really love their chickens. They sing to them and everything. They hold out in the fields. I can't see that there's any suffering there because they lay the eggs anyway, don't they?
I've seen those pictures too, Claire, and it is a beautiful picture, and I would love to believe it. But unfortunately, what I have learned is that about 97 to perhaps 99% of all the chickens that actually land in the grocery stores and all of the eggs that you're buying actually come from a stressed factory farming situation. And even when they say, cage free, if you see the pictures, you'll realize that they're still not given room to roam. They can't pick around and do things that chickens naturally do. So it's still not a harmonious experience for chickens.
I understand that, Cheryl. And, forgive me if I cut across you. But, as I said to you, I only go to the happy farms. So I'm in the 3%. I'm doing the right thing because they lay the eggs anyway. What are we meant to do with the eggs? They're byproducts, really, aren't they?
Well, then the question becomes, what are happening to all the males? Do you see all the roosters that didn't were not given a chance to live because they were destroyed? They're only keeping, Claire, the hens that in their minds offer something to do of value for humans. So there's half of the population that they're doing away with so that you can have your free range eggs.
Well, I must check that out. I
Okay.
must check that out because I would not be happy with that. That's a terrible thing. And, maybe they need to produce less roosters. The sort of thing people
that's
say,
like
isn't
saying we should produce fewer males. I mean, I don't know that I know that I'm not God, Claire. I know that I'm not here to decide who gets to be on the planet and who doesn't. I just know that roosters are part of the chicken population, and when their lives are being cut short at the day they're born, that I just don't want to participate in that cruelty.
Sure. No, I understand that. And that's why I'm so glad that I'm vegetarian. You've given me something to think about. I need to do a bit of homework on that. And if there's a way in which I can eat the eggs and still reduce, well, I say, I don't think we're ever going to not have suffering. I mean, how are we going to live without, having eggs and cheese and all that sort of stuff? Where do you get your protein from after all, Cheryl?
Well, Claire, I hear you that we're not going to eliminate all suffering. I'm sure that without meaning to, I create harm every day. My goal, though, is to intentionally, whenever possible, not create harm. And I happen to get all of my protein from plants. I don't need it from animals because if you think about it, where did the animals get their protein? They got it from the plants. So this is just a very inefficient way that you have been, and not just you, Claire, but our societies have been told we need this protein from animals. But nothing could be further from the truth. And I think of myself as an example of that. I live very comfortably without that heavy cruelty. When I think of cheese, I think of the poor little calves that have been ripped away from their mothers. I think of it, quite frankly, it's gross to me where that milk has come from. Milk is not meant for, the only milk that's meant for humans is human milk. Think about that. All the other animals.
Cheryl, you are on a roll. You are, so you should be on the stage. But I do, and I'll intervene for a moment because obviously we've got listeners going, well, everybody's going to agree with you, and I agree with you 150%. The question is, if I was a not yet vegan, I might feel I'm starting to be preached at because I'm the good guy here. I'm the vegetarian. You're doing, also most importantly, you're doing all the heavy lifting. You're doing all the hard work. I bring my values to the dinner table as well. So we want me to defend my inherent cruelty, actually, rather than we might come across as better than them, not because your voice is saying that or the way you're sharing the true information. It's the person can start to feel uncomfortable. So number one, I love how you're using we all the time as well. Are you aware of this? Are you sort of that? But I'd be asking more questions and letting them answer it. So are you aware of the male? What's going on with the males? You want them to say, no, what's going on with the males? Because as soon as they start asking questions, they've got to get an image in their head somehow. Yeah, you've got all the information and you're so eloquent and it's wonderful. Just needs to be broken up, I would suggest, purely because of the human animal and the resistance because it's a very inconvenient truth. But I'm where you are ideologically. You should just have to tell people that and they should stop in an instant. We can't believe it, can we?
No.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's important. I realize we can't spend the whole podcast on this topic, but I think it's important for people to see that it's a process to learn. I mean, you're so eloquent because you've put so much effort in research and practice. And so you've got a system down that you know how to answer those questions. Some of us are not there yet. I know that I don't feel that I'm there yet, but I know that the only way I'm going to get there is if I practice. So for that, yes. I thank you, Claire.
You're listening to Better Life for Animals podcast. Our mission is to amplify the voices of animal advocates, sanctuaries, and change makers working toward a kinder, more compassionate world. But we can't do it alone. We need your help. First of all, go ahead and subscribe to this channel wherever you're watching or listening. And then get involved by visiting betterlifeforanimals.com. That's betterlifeforanimals.com. Be sure to check out our blog, learn more about incredible sanctuaries, and explore our book section, where 100% of net proceeds from book sales are donated to sanctuaries. Every action you take helps to make a difference. And remember, subscribe to this channel. And now, back to the show.
So for those of you who are just joining us, we are having this very lively conversation, maybe a little bit unexpected, but I'm good with that, with the magnificent Clare Mann.
Oh, you're such a natural, Cheryl. You really are. And the lovely thing is it's daring to do this. You know, I mean, it is practice. And all of us, sometimes I mess up. I really do. And I get angry or I get sarcastic or something. But you can salvage that. But I think the thing is realizing you've got all the facts, all the morality, all the economics, all the ideologically, the logic, the health, the environment, the ecosystems. You've got every piece in your arsenal. The human animal is going to resist it because you think we don't want to feel bad. We don't want to feel we're doing the wrong thing. You know, we're not fighting people on morals. We've got to get it in that they get, oh my God, really? And the way we do that is making ourselves a bit smaller, but feeding that in many ways and seeing their reaction and encouraging the shudder. So when we say, you rare about the males, all those roosters get killed. You know that? Oh, no, I'm not. Well, what do you think about that? And you know, use their language as well. What do you think or what do you feel? Listen to their language, because talking to someone who's very logical and you keep talking feelings, it can break a rapport. But, you know, I think I could see you speaking to Rotary. I could see you speaking to lots of, just sharing that information in a group situation. It's fantastic, that all that information, because then people don't feel so much on the spot. But yes, we all need practice, hey?
Yes, we do. Well, your newest book, The Myths of Choice, in that book you explore the idea that our choices aren't as free as we think. So how does this apply to food systems and the societal norms around animals?
Yes. Well, I actually brought the Myths of Choice with me, and I've got an exciting thing because there's a new one coming out as well. The Myths of Choice, why people won't change and what we can do about it. To answer the question, let's define what a myth is. It doesn't mean it's a load of nonsense or it doesn't exist. A myth is an unquestioned assumption. And we make assumptions all the time from social, cultural, personal, family. And the way you know you've got a myth operating is usually the words I should, I ought, or I must. Everyone knows you've got to eat meat. We should eat that for protein. We should have that for calcium or something. I ought to go and visit my mother-in-law every weekend because that's what good daughter-in-laws do. I must work very hard so I can buy a home over my head because that's what responsible people do. We don't have to do any of this. These are inherent beliefs. Some of them are desirable. I must never leave my children. That's probably a good one, particularly when they're a certain age. But it doesn't mean you can't. This is the thing. People leave their children all the time. It's not desirable. There's a consequence. But it's grasping that we have choice. Now, the not yet vegan, and I'm calling them more pre-vegans, actually, because they're vegans in the waiting room, because they do care about animals. They might even care about just their own animal or their own children or their community. So we're trying to make them pro-vegan and expand that window of consciousness to all living creatures and ecosystems. So when the myths you hear them saying is, well, everyone knows you've got to eat meat. In fact, our media tell us these days what we know so far. It's a collective brainwashing, really, for us to look the other way at some misdemeanors that none of us are happy about. So everyone knows you need to do this. And we've always done this. The government would never allow it. These are myths, unquestioned assumptions that there are certain things in place. And it really is about our existential certainty. Well, you know, I know my own father-in-law said something about health-wise. We have to trust someone. I've got to trust my doctor. Always as if, well, you've got to trust someone. It's better than the cleaner around the corner if I'm talking health, as opposed to questioning his doctor wasn't even talking to him about what he ate, for instance. So this keeps people stuck. So we have to break through that trance of, you know, anyone ever says to me, well, everybody knows that. I said, I don't think everybody does, because I didn't know what you're saying. You immediately sort of got them everyone knows you've got to eat meat. I said, who are the everybody? I said, it's like when they do a review of not that I particularly go to theatres, but, there's been this theatre review. This is the greatest film. I said, well, I've never been asked. So what about all the people that, haven't asked? They don't even want to go and see these things. So these are myths, and they stand in the way. Now, when we understand our own myths, because what do we hold as vegans? The world will never become vegan. We won't see it in our lifetime. I don't believe that for a moment. I believe without a shadow of a doubt, we will see a vegan world in our lifetime. Is it because everyone's going to wake up consciously? I don't actually think that's going to be the case. But the reality is most people follow. This is what's happening at the moment. This is why they're eating a diet that's killing them, contributing to enormous suffering of animals, enormous suffering of workers, degradation of our environment, all the things that go with it. There's no good news about eating animals, as we know. But they're going along with it because they've inherited it. When we truly take ownership of our choices and see possibilities, we can then start to say, where am I denying I have choice? We're always told to eat meat, we say. So, well, not everybody does, and you don't necessarily need to because you were brought up that way. It's that existential uncertainty that goes, well, if I can change, what else can I change?
Animal sanctuaries, as you know, are very near and dear to my heart, as I know they are to yours, Clare. Mm-hmm. So how do you find animal sanctuaries to be a key piece of this? And how do we use these sanctuaries in order to help heal ourselves and that role that we're playing with animals?
Yes. You're absolutely right. Animal sanctuaries play such a pivotal role in not only saving animals, the lucky ones in many ways, who get to live lives that they're destined to live, free from harm and free to express their own behaviors. They also become enormously nurturing places for advocates to be around other living creatures and be reminded of what we're heading towards, what we are trying to give back, what we have stolen from living creatures. And it can embolden our work, actually, in ending all animal incarceration. But they're also a wonderful means of education. We can bring our families to these places, our friends, who make individual connections with animals. The individual stories of animals, as you know, and in your podcast, and the people you're interviewing. And there was, I think, Lancaster Farm was the most recent one I listened to. And, there are people, and people connect with one individual pig or chicken or goat. And we give them the background to that, what happened to them. The mother cow who's with her baby for the first time, but has lost three other babies, which she'll never get over. I won't leave that for a moment. Is the person can see the uniqueness there, and it can fan the flames of that pre-vegan heart, I believe. So they're a wonderful way to do all of these things. If not, so often I see vegans in our pain, in our Vystopia, wanting to end this, but actually we need to have, and that's absolutely right, by the way, we must each bring our gifts to the world to do that, but we must have a vision of the world that we want to create. What is a vegan world like? And a big part of that is sanctuary life, because we're seeing not non-human animals living lives that are more natural to them. In theory, there wouldn't be pens around them or big fields around them. They would be free to roam. I'd like to think dogs were like Inspector Rex in that lovely European film where they're running around and jumping into shops, and if they were hungry, someone would feed them. We'd all look after this. We're not there yet, but let's have that vision of world. And I think sanctuaries have a means to nurture us. They certainly nurture the animals, but they become a beacon of light that can be a huge educational component for pre-vegans.
That feels like a beautiful place to end, because it's so uplifting and aspirational. And if you believe that we're going to have a vegan world in our lifetime, I'm going to believe with you. I'm going to do that. Yeah.
It's so wonderful.
It's a wonderful feeling.
And thoughts of things, they don't just make us feel warm and fuzzy. When we look in the area of quantum physics, thoughts really are things. There's our mindset, our thoughts, our self-talk. Collectively, when we look at changes in the resonance of the earth, fueled by the wars that we've got going on at the moment, it is enormously disrupted. when we have moments of peace or meditation. The Maharishi studies were indicative of that. The Peaceful Cities projects, when people focus on kindness and compassion, Will Tuttle's, meditation circles, we find changes in the resonance of the earth. We see reductions in crime in local areas where this is happening. So it doesn't only make us feel warm and fuzzy, it is changing our interactions. We see possibilities, but collectively we are influencing the whole. That's why I believe we don't all need to change. In fact, any social change, we're about the 1.5% to 2.5% that need to reach that point before we nip into what's called the early adopters, which is about another 13.5%. When we reach about 16% of a population, there is quite a rapid change of the next 30 odd percent, which is called the early majority. The next 30%, the early majority, and I think there might be a little section, but the laggards are 7%. The laggards are the ones that go, oh, well, everybody does it. I don't believe in this environmental nonsense, but I'm going to use my recycling bin because that's what we do. I'm not going to eat meat because, oh my God, who eats that? So we have to, not get distracted by I say nonsense. There's an enormous amount of suffering, and we're all concerned about all these horrors that are happening around the world. But we can't do a lot about a lot of things, but this is something we can do. Right. Let's be a vegan every day to everyone we're speaking to. Everyone we interact with, let us be the vegans we wish we had met before we were vegan. And they go, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you raised that, Cheryl. You told me, because I wouldn't have changed else. And now I'm part of the solution, not the problem.
Beautiful. Claire, tell us how we can find you. And I know there's a lot of listeners out there who are going to want to read your books or maybe take your course. So tell us how to find you.
Yes. Well, I'm vegan psychologist, of course, and veganpsychologist.com has a lot of things on there. One of the things I'd love to invite people to is I regularly run webinar, free masterclasses, a 90-minute, which is called Beyond Vystopia Advantage. I've now called it. It is a Beyond Vystopia. There is an advantage of getting beyond, not without it, beyond it. 3 keys to communicate with confidence and impact. It's a 90-minute masterclass. It's live. I will share with you the different ingredients I believe are pivotal to us becoming calm, confident, and most importantly, influential. Okay, when we look at, it's a combination of personal development and communication mastery. I do run courses, I run programs, there's a number of ways to work with me, but I think that's probably, you can contact me on my website if that's a conversation you'd like to have. It's not for everybody, my program, it's for people that don't want quick solutions, that really want to transform, they want behavior change, not just mood change. But if I can't help you, I will certainly point you in the right direction. So that's veganpsychologist.com /master-class-register. So you can either go to veganpsychologist.com, but if you put a /master-class-register, you can go on the wait list for my next 90-minute masterclass. And I promise you, you will leave inspired, but with some key skills that you're going to be able to put into place right away.
Excellent. Claire, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. Thank you for practicing with me, and thank you for helping me as I continue to try to get the word out there that we want to create a better life for animals. So if you've enjoyed today's podcast, please like and subscribe so that we can create a better life for animals.
Thank you for joining us on the Better Life for Animals podcast. Together, we can create a world where all beings are treated with dignity, respect, and care. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening. It helps us reach more people and spread awareness about the incredible work happening in animal sanctuaries. You can also share this episode with friends and fellow advocates to keep the conversation going. Until next time, keep speaking up, taking action, and making a difference for the animals.